Okay, welcome everybody. This is the audit committee meeting, the much tardy audit committee meeting, Friday, December 8th, 2023. Let the record reflect that all committee members are present. And with that, I would like to ask our interpreter to discuss how the interpretive services work. Assuming the interpreter's online.
Yes. Announcement from interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on Mute Original Audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check on a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación globo terráqueo y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés, en el fondo, por favor, seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Okay.
Thank you. With that, let's go ahead and do the pledge. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we do have a bunch of new people here today, even though we're insanely short on time. I think it's important that we go through the process of at least everybody introducing themselves and maybe just saying one or two things, being brief. I will go ahead and start since I'm already talking. I'm Dave Zito. I'm the chair of the audit committee. I've been the chair for the past roughly 3 years, and I'm also the deputy mayor of the city of Solana Beach. I will then let our first meeting of our wonderful new independent performance auditor. I'll start from that direction.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Courtney Ruby. I'm the new independent performance auditor and so happy to be here. This is day 18.
Yes. Why don't you let the rest of your team go now?
Thank you. My name is Lloyd Carter. I'm one of the principals and I've been here 3 years. And these are my team and I'll let you go ahead.
Christopher Delgado, Associate Auditor. I've been here a little over a year now.
Ray.
Hi, my name is Ray Major. I'm the Deputy CEO for SANDAG, and I'd like to welcome you to the Audit Committee. We always have really great discussions here, so thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So sorry. I'm Crystal Carranza. I'm an Associate Auditor.
Hi, Doug DePete. I'm a principal auditor and I've been with SANDAG since 2012.
I'm Christian McClare and I'm the intern.
Dave Drucker. I've been on the audit committee for less than a year now. And I am on the city council in Del Mar. I'm the board chair for the Clean Energy Alliance and on the board of NCTD.
Ed Musgrove, San Marcos City Council. I'm the alternate member, and I think this might be my 3rd year as audit. Thank you. Amberlynn.
I'm Amberlynn Deaton. I'm SANDAG Deputy General Counsel, and I provide legal support to our audit team, or excuse me, our audit committee.
Agnes Wong Nickerson. I'm the public member on audit committee. I've been on this committee for about 2 years now.
Shanae Pickney Forrest, also a public member on this audit committee, also my first time.
And I will reiterate the welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm very excited about having all of this new talent on board. That's great. With that, I did want to note that I'm going to be shifting the agenda around a little bit because we got very much short on time here. The items number 2 and 3 will shift to the end of the agenda if we get to them. And then we are going to take we'll take item 1, the member comments, public comments first, then we'll shift to item 6, and then we'll take items 4 and 5 after that, probably in reverse order. So I think we'll do 6, 5, 4, and hopefully do our best to get through as much as we can today. So with that, we will go ahead and start with public comment, and and then after that, I'll do some member comment, but due to the shortness of the amount of our meetings, since the board ran over so much, I've asked public comment and comment items to be 90 seconds or 1.5 minutes. Okay, do we have our first speaker?
Thank you, Chair. First speaker will be Truth, and after Truth will be MK online.
All right. Doesn't like half butt jobs. David Zito, my real alias is Disruptor. You want to keep this dysfunctional Monopoly game going? Well, I prefer to see it eliminated. And, you know, that's a great introduction to everybody, right? You don't even know anything about me, and that's the way I've started off the conversation. And you probably won't see me again because I don't like 9 a.m. meetings, and that's what's going to happen to the audit committee. Although I could understand why, because 3 p.m. to start a meeting, it's not so good. But so I was glad to meet you newbies. You're going to have fun. Day 18 for Courtney, and it's already a crazy meeting earlier. Let's see. And poor David Zito, he's been here all day. I don't know how you're going to last. I was told to say nice things about Ed, and that's pretty easy. Although, despite making deals with the devil to be here, he's actually a nice guy. Now, I don't know if I have time to say all this, so I'm going to quote George Washington's farewell address delivered in 1796, quote, "To undermine what cannot be directly overthrown, parties in the state, the alternate domination of one faction over another leads to a permanent despotism. The disorders and misery which result incline men to seek security in the absolute power of an individual on the ruins of public liberty. It serves always to distract the public councils. It agitates the community with false alarms, kindles animosity one against another, and foments riot and insurrection. It opens the door to foreign influence and corruption. Time and habit are necessary to fix the true character of governments, to maintain all in the secure and tranquil enjoyment of the rights of person and property. The jealousy of a free people ought to be constantly awake." End quote.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be MK, who will be followed by the original draw.
Thank you. This is Mary Kay. Yes, you all know me. I just wanted to say a quick welcome to the new public members. Hello to Zito, David, and Agnes. Thank you for continuing this. Hi to this wonderful team who will continue supporting Courtney, and just wanted to wish Courtney the best of luck because I know she's awesome and she's going to do fine. So that's all I've got to say. Good luck, everybody, and keep going.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be the original draw. You can go ahead.
Man, what just happened in that last meeting is atrocious, but it's just a very clear sign of the way that the people think about you guys because of all the corruption and fraud and abuse that's going on. Because what happens is these boards take the people's freedoms and rights granted to us by our creator and act like they are privileges, and therefore then can dictate what we can and can't do and try and assess fees and different things to allow us to use like the public roads that are for the people. They're not actually to be, governed in the way that you guys are doing that. And we give you the rights to do the things that you do, but you guys want to sit and take the people's rights and act like you have authority over us. And that's the problem. You guys take an oath and you're abrogating that. And you're supposed to be looking into the fraud, waste, and abuse. And yet here we are, and we have all of this corruption going on, and it's kind of being brushed under the rug, which is what happens on a regular basis. And it's just sad because, you have a chairwoman who sits there and talks the way that she does to all of the board members, let alone the fact that she does it to the public. But we allow this to continue, and it's just like nothing to see here. But you guys wonder why there's no faith in this board for, or SANDAG, but it's because of the things that go on. And I mean, Nora's upset that the A+ rating is not being reported in the news. It's because you guys don't have an A+ rating. It's an F. And if there was anything beyond that, it would be a Z.
That concludes the public commenters.
Thank you. And great to hear from you, Mary. Thanks for joining in. I also will say, since I suspect my two public members back there won't make it to the end of the meeting, I'll say happy holidays to you now, and hope you have a really good time off until the new year. So go have fun. Anyway, so with that, we will now move on to member comments. I'm going to hijack Ray's thunder here and announce that just for everybody's information, that Colleen Clemenson in the last meeting was announced as the interim executive director, CEO, whatever the title is these days, for the agency until they have hired a new permanent one, and the contract is for up to 12 months or until the new executive director is on board. So I'd like you to all congratulate Colleen. I think it's a great choice, and looking forward to having her lead the agency for the next several months. With that, do we have any other member comments, non-agenda items? No, okay. So we will quickly move on to item number 6, which is a sort of a continuation from the last meeting. And I think a lot of you got to hear a lot of this while you were waiting for our meeting to start. So Andre, you can take that into consideration as you're presenting the information.
Thank you, Chair Zito. And yes, I know a lot of you heard of this information, so maybe we can brief it up a little bit for you here today. But in general, the reason why we're here is to address some of the allegations that you've heard recently in the papers about the customer account issues that we've been having on our toll roads. Now, there's no doubt that we have some deficiencies in the accounting software of the current back office system that we are using. But I want to emphasize that the issue is not on the customer side that Lucinda is responsible for. It really is an internal accounting issue that occurs after customer transactions have been properly processed. So our goal today is to provide you and the public accurate information regarding the true scope of these deficiencies and our efforts to resolve them. So currently, SANDAG has approximately 50,000 customer accounts. In August of this year, we discovered that approximately 55,000 of those accounts did not accurately reconcile to the internal accounting general ledger by a total of $87,000. So the general ledger on the accounting side was off by $87,000 at that point. But after identifying several common system errors that totaled 78,000, it was found that certain types of transactions were responsible for the improper posting of transactions from 45,000 of those accounts to the internal general ledger, which has since been corrected. Again, it was the flow of transactions to the accounting system that was not working. It did not impact the customer accounts. Ultimately, there were 10,000 accounts with a variance of $8,771. Now, again, that's relatively a small amount compared to the $50 million in tolls that we collected last year. However, we will not rest until we are 100% reconciled and balanced between the customer accounts and the general ledger. Fagan Consulting is currently working on helping us reconcile the remaining balance with the SANDAG staff. Aside from the reconciliation issues I just mentioned, SANDAG staff has also identified other anomalies in the customer accounts. For example, recently, approximately 100 transactions were posted to the incorrect customer accounts and charged to the incorrect customer credit cards. This required staff to manually adjust and issue refunds to those accounts. Staff is consistently monitoring the system to identify any errors in customer accounts and immediately address them. We also brought in the summer of 2021, in fact, Mary Kay and her OIPA office did the report where we discovered that the tolls, the old legacy systems, a number of the equipment had been faulty. And so there was potential $1.8 million in tolls that we did not collect. The good news is, as of today, all that equipment has been replaced by cash and all the equipment is properly functioning. Now, it is clear that our efforts to move the agency to a new toll collection system have not been without challenges, and these challenges are not unique to SANDAG. So today I will walk you through a brief history of our two toll roads on I-15 and SR-125, and Lucinda will walk you through a trip and how it's calculated and billed to a customer. I'll also describe to you our efforts to disclose the accounting issues that we've had to our external auditors, our bond counsel, as well as our board of directors. Finally, Lucinda will describe the agency's plans to move forward with a new back office system. So currently we have two toll operations active in our region. One is the I-15 express lanes, which are 20 miles between San Diego and North Escondido, and the SR-125, which is the toll road, which is from San Diego south to Otay Mesa. And the little orange dot there in the bottom or square shows the Otay Mesa East port of entry. That's the third facility that will come on board in the near future. So I-15 was built and operated in partnership with Caltrans. It's a Transnet project that was started in the late 1990s, and improvements have been made throughout the years. The cost of this was a total about $1 billion, and Transnet was approximately $100 million of that $1 billion. So we actually managed to leverage $900 million of federal and state dollars for this. Express lanes are free for carpoolers, vanpoolers, transit riders, clean air vehicle drivers, and motorcyclists. And the fast track transponder is what is used in the express lanes for a fee, anywhere from 50 cents. The maximum is $8 if you travel the entire length. We also have dynamic pricing, which is used to manage a congestion in the express lane, and median barriers also move to increase or decrease the number of lanes in each direction. The SR-125 that was purchased out of bankruptcy in 2011. This facility initially cost the concessionaires $1 billion, but we bought it at a 65% discount. The idea was that we would move congestion away from I-805 onto parallel roads, such as the SR-125. We initially lowered the toll rates by 25 to 40%. Traffic that first year jumped by 20%. And today it's doubled what it was in 2011. There's 51,000 trips per day average, as opposed to back then was 26,000. So certainly has done what the board intended it to do. I-15 currently has no debt. SR-125 does have debt. When we purchased the toll road, it had pretty onerous TIFIA loans on it that we managed to refinance out in 2017, but we did that once we're able to increase the ratings on the road. Initially, it was a BBB minus facility. We got it up to A minus, and so we went to the bond market, refinanced the debt, and saved approximately $147 million in debt service. And currently, we've been upgraded to an A plus. You can see the reasons why here. Currently, there's $167 million in outstanding debt. And so that is one of the main reasons why it's important to have a great operational system. And now I'll turn it over to Lucinda, who will describe our operations and how we capture traffic and then appropriately bill our users.
Thank you again, Lucinda Broussard, Director of Regional Transportation Systems. We have two systems that actually are out on the roadway or part of the roadway. One is called a roadside system. I'm going to explain what it does and then tell you who does it for us. So it actually captures all the transactions, and transaction data is when a vehicle goes through, the date, the time, the place, if it has a tag or not. If it has a license plate, it takes a picture of it. If it has a tag, they have readers and they actually read that tag that's associated with an account. They also, on the lanes, add the rate for the toll. So all of that is happening on the roadside. In 2016, we did an open procurement. We had 4 bidders. Capch was the bidder who won, and Capch is now our roadside equipment provider, and they do it for the I-15 and the 125. They just finished in June, completing all installations. So they have changed out all of the gantries, and all of the equipment on both roads. We also have something called the back office. So after we have a transaction that's built, it moves over to the back office. The back office is our financial transaction, CRM, or customer relationship management system. It bills customers. If you do not have an account, it does that. It also deducts if you do have an account. It takes the money out of your account. It actually is it's the portal where customers call into or have access on the web. Kind of does everything there. Our vendor for that is ETAN. ETAN was also a competitive procurement in 2016. They were supposed to deliver a system in 2018. And it says no system acceptance date there because they delivered part of our system, the I-15, November 2020. They delivered the 125 in June of 2022. It's one facility, so they're a regional back office. But we don't see an end or that will ever be fulfilled where we'll have a system that works completely. Process flow. Transactions happen at the roadside. As I said, they're captured by all that equipment, and a toll rate is placed on there, moves over to the back office. The back office posts to an account, or if it can, it'll mail out a violation notice. Everything else is happening there. And then it goes to the general ledger. It's actually, there's a financial system in there too. So it's moving through the back office, posting to accounts, taking care of all the financial also taking care of all the customer issues. If we have cases, we have emails, all of those things are happening through this one system. The 45,000 that we're talking about are 45,000 types of transactions. So I'll give an example. If you're a customer, you buy a new vehicle, you forget to call or update online that you bought a new vehicle, that transaction is considered a violation. If you call us or you get online, but you literally get it and say, hey, I have an account, why am I getting these? We actually transfer that transaction over to your account, take off all the penalties, all the fees, reduce the toll because you're a customer. All of that happens on the system on this side, but it does not report to the general ledger in the same system. There were 55,000, the population in the beginning. We've identified 45,000. We've also done all the journal entries for those 45,000. So those are all complete. We still have 10,000 that need to be verified. We're going to have Fagan Consulting come in and actually verify that the customer account balances are accurate. In this 45,000, none of them affected the customer account balance. They were all a general ledger reporting issue. Ron Fagan is not here with us right now. I'll do his. He was virtual with us. I'll do his slide. Fagan Consultant came in November 2022. They did a couple of things for us. They did ramps for the roadside. So they went out on the roadside, put up some equipment, and they literally ran through transactions to make sure that they were captured. And then they tested those against the CAPS system to make sure that all those transactions were captured. And that was accurate. They also did a further test, and this was a test to see that those transactions went over to the back office system, the ETAN system, that they were posted correctly to the correct account for the correct amount. They did 32 different trips. And on 125, you can do a short trip, a long trip. They did every trip that you could do. It comes out to 32. They did half with the transponder and half without. They are a TCA customer, but we're interoperable. So it doesn't matter if you did it with us or at TCA, we would still get our toll. They did all of those trips and not one of those. They were delayed in posting, but they all posted correctly.
So I think, again, going back to the press, one of the issues was how forthcoming and how transparent were we with some of these issues. And, we started to find out these issues as we were doing our year-end financials. In August, we realized that there were some deficiencies. So in September, we actually called in ETAN's accountant. She actually flew in, worked with our staff in San Diego, tried our best to reconcile, but we saw that ultimately any of the manual transactions were not posting through. So at that point, we alerted our independent external auditors, Davis Farr. They do our annual financial reports for us for not only SR 125, but all the SANDAG entities, the Regional Transportation Commission, SourcePoint, Argus, and SANDAG itself. So we alerted them. At the same time, we alerted our Bond Disclosure Council, because as I mentioned earlier, we do have outstanding bonds. And they said that based on the fact that this wasn't really a revenue issue, more of an accounting issue, that they didn't feel that it needed disclosure at that point. Again, we're confident that the revenues that we should be receiving, it is just an accounting issue. And then lastly, we went to closed session and let our board of directors know of the issue as well. I think it was the October 13th board meeting. I'll just turn it back to Lucinda to talk about the current new back office system, A2B and Deloitte, that we intend to put on board.
So this is our solution. Oh, sorry. We just told you about some of the issues we were having with the ETAN system, and this is our solution. Right now, we have Deloitte and A2B, and they are partnerships. So it's not just Deloitte, it's not just A2B, they are a partnership. A2B does toll roads, and Deloitte, of course, does data analytics, financial. Together, they are bringing us a toll system. We're looking forward to coming, and I have some slides about what Deloitte does and what A2B does, and I can tell you that it's not the one, it's the two together that give us I don't know how to go back, so I won't. Oh, there it goes. that give us the system we're looking for. It's scalable, which means that you can plug another facility in it, OME or any other facility, because it is it's kind of the mother brain of what we do. We would like to amend the contract with ETAN to have them help us, because there has to be a migration. They have all that customer data in their system, and we need that information to go over to the new system so customers it's not seamless, but it's definitely not starting over from scratch and asking people to open new accounts again. So we are still working with ETAN, asking them to help us through the migration, which they've been doing so far, and it's been going well. I think that the thing that's important here is that the new system that we looked at, we're looking at a sole source, but we're also looking at a system that's robust enough to handle all the financials, handle all the reporting, handle all the customer. It's like the peripherals. There's the telephony or the IVR, the customers call in, the website, the mobile apps, they do all of that. A2B does 1,000 miles of tolling in Europe. So they're not new to the game about how you process a transaction. Fagan, who I just did his slide, but Fagan Consulting is going to be our management consultant to help us through this conversion. So they'll be on board to help us get through. And there's some information about Deloitte and A2B.
So this slide is taken from our board presentation earlier today. Certainly, these are the items that we're going to be bringing back to our board of directors as far as if there's any findings by our external auditors who are currently underway doing the year-end audit. We'll also provide an update on those 10,000 transactions that we are still needing to reconcile for $8,771. And then lastly, we'll also give an update on the progress of migrating the information from ETAN over to A2B. Right now, we're in a 60-day period that Deloitte is doing an assessment, and I'm pleased to report that ETAN is working really well with our new vendor. And so we will be reporting all of these findings to the board, and also glad to come back to the audit committee and report to you as well. Thank you, Chair. That concludes our presentation.
Thanks for that. I'd like to first start by going to public comment. Francesca?
Thank you. We have one public comment, the original draw. You can go ahead.
So Andre, you said 60,000 customers. It's actually 90. I think you just misspoke. But when you see that 45,000 of them, which is 50%, have had this issue, you know, it's like when there's 1.8 million that you guys lose from revenue or whatever, you go ahead and fix the problem immediately. But then when it comes to the people being affected by something, it seems that it takes this going out into the press for you guys to actually really acknowledge it. And you know, I don't know why it's only being done on the I-25. It also needs to be on the 15 as well. Because obviously since 2018, you've been using this entity. And so the audit should actually go back to then. And I don't know how you think that 32 trips made when 50% of the 90,000 are being affected. There's no way with those 32 trips that you're ever going to find any kind of data that is going to prove to you that the system is flawed. So it's, you know, a bit negligent to sit here and only audit a certain amount when we should be going back, because there are people from the I-15 that are also complaining about these issues. But, you know, and you aren't being transparent when it has to be that the press has to bring this forward in order for you guys to actually do anything. It's very sad that, you know, and it's no wonder why the people have no trust in this, in SANDAG. They actually have a really, really bad rating. And this is why, because when it affects the customers, they're second when it comes to things.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. So first, I think at this point, if there are questions of the presenters, we should go into some questions before we get to any discussion or thoughts. So if people have questions, Agnes?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you clarify that the 55,000 accounts that have transactions that did not match the customer account to the general ledger? So you're saying the customer accounts were accurate, so customers have been charged the right amount, but the full amount didn't get to GL, general ledger. So the general ledger probably understated in terms of their revenue. Is that what the impact is?
That's correct. And so just to, I think the example is if somebody uses the road on the transponder, it's working accurately, as we've also verified. The problem is if there's for example, if you buy a new car and you forget to put the transponder or let us know that you bought the new car, you may get violations and some penalties. So if you call up the office, the customer service will say, oh, you do have this account, let's just move it over. They'll get rid of the violations and the fees. They're doing that manually now in the system. Those are the things not translating over to the general ledger. So the things that are automatic are happening well, but anytime somebody from customer service touches the account and deletes like a penalty or a fee, those are not coming over. And so initially, the 45,000 that we're able to identify were fairly easy because they were all very similar items. And so we're able to identify them. And right now we're down to 10,000 that we haven't, because they're different. They're not necessarily something that you can point to and say it's the same population. They're different anomalies that we haven't quite identified yet.
So that 55,000 accounts are all the accounts with this kind of menu adjustment, right? So you actually look at the whole population. So this is not just a sample of it.
I'm sorry, could you speak into your...
I'm sorry, I was asking the 55,000 that you looked at is the total population of accounts that have this kind of manual adjustments, right? They're not just a sample or subset.
Correct, it's the total. So in other words, we have 90,000 customers and 55,000 is what was impacted. It's not a sample. Those were the ones impacted.
I see. Okay. And then second question I have, this back office system that is not working, that needs to be replaced. Is it a new system, relatively new, that you implemented?
It was implemented June 2022.
So basically, it's a system that you have paid for that didn't perform the way it's supposed to be, basically, right?
That is correct.
Yes.
And I assume you will take legal action because the vendor did not deliver what they're supposed to deliver.
To be fair, the vendor, we're able to accurately receive information and get the right amount of revenue. The problem is in the software as far as it's not acceptable, but it's a smaller portion. In other words, we're collecting 50 million in tolls, right? And we know that that's fairly accurate. The smaller part is the general ledger issue that we're having. And again, the vendor has told us that they cannot correct that, which is obviously not acceptable to us, right? That's what we paid them for, and they should be able to deliver that. They are not able to, and that's why we're moving. So as far as the legal remedies, I'd prefer that I would ask Amberlyn to address that at this point.
Certainly, the vendor contracts that are involved in this issue all have, various remedies that are available to the agency. None of those have been waived. No rights have been waived at this point in time. And the board would have the opportunity to pursue those remedies if it chose.
Okay, I hope the board or the management will, because I assume there are costs caused by this deficiency, right, in the product and service.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just to follow up on one of those questions a little bit. So in the report you mentioned there were 100 counts that were actually charged to the wrong account, which I'm just curious if that was how that was discovered, and if that was discovered in a way that makes you feel confident that those are the only 100.
They were discovered during a review of some financials when we were trying to do reconciliation. They put in a fix for it. Once we figured out what it was, they understood what it was doing in the system, and there have been no more. So those that has stopped.
Okay, is it fair to say that if it was discovered in the process of doing this reconciliation that a few more may be discovered as you do the remaining 10,000 accounts or transactions that aren't reconciled at this point?
I'm gonna kind of say it two different ways.
Okay.
So of the 55,000, we found 45,000 that had that error about manual adjustments.
Right.
None of those affected any accounts.
Okay.
They did not affect any account balance. So that 10,000, the 100 was not part of any of that.
Okay.
Okay.
But so at this point, everything's reconciled and you feel there are no other affected accounts that were mischarged.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay,
I
so there
couldn't
could
say
be
that.
more
A
discovered,
bank.
but it's
So
not
like a bank,
notable.
I couldn't
Okay,
say that.
thanks. Shani.
So in regards to the 100 transactions, do you have any information as to the types of findings from those transactions? Meaning, were they all similar accounts and customers, or was there an assortment of accounts and customers regarding those 100 transactions?
That was random. The 100, it's like 111, and that had separate from this issue of the 49,000, this 100 plus were a different issue, and they actually were charging the wrong credit card and paying for someone else's account. That's what that issue was that we have resolved.
Correct. And so in that instance, were there large amounts of the same customer being charged, or
No.
it was all random?
It was all random, and they were all different customers, and it was from 5 cents to like 300 and I'm going to say 350 or above.
350.
I don't remember that last number, but I remember the first was 5 cents.
Okay, and then a second question in regards to the I-15. I had the same question as the public comment in regards to, are those transactions going to be reviewed, or was there a sample conducted to test transactions on the I-15, to test those I-15 transactions to see if there was a similar issue?
So of the 90,000 accounts, those are account holders who use both of our facilities.
Okay.
So of the 49 or 55,000, those are people who use both of our facilities.
Okay. So
those are transactions from wherever you use the road.
Okay, so the I-25 and the I-15 have been included in this review.
It's one regional back office, and the vendor who does the toll road, it all goes into one place. So
Gotcha.
you're just a customer and you use whatever road you choose.
Okay, and last question, in regards to the 10,000 transactions that are outstanding, that are like pending review, is there like an anticipated timeline for those to be completed? Are we looking at like a month from now, 2 months from now? What's the timeline for that?
Yeah, so I think the first 45,000 were easy to identify because we could see anomalies that were impacting like similar ones. Coming down to these 10,000, it's not as much that we can identify as in a group. And so partly we have also asked Reagan, our consultant, to help us with it. Our year end is June 30th, so we're ideally trying to get these reconciled before so we can have timely filing of our annual financial reports. We're working, hopefully, if it's not next week, the following, to get that reconciled. That's the goal, as soon as possible. But we have also found out from Disclosure Council that if we don't meet our December 31st deadline, we can file unaudited financial report and also put an explanation as to why. And I don't think a balance of 8,000 is going to give too much of a heartburn to any of our bondholders. So it's not like it's a panic button if we don't get the audit done by the end of the calendar year.
Thank you.
Yeah, Agnes?
I actually do have another question that when there's slide that you show disclosure, is there any reason why the audit committee was not part of that process? Because I have to say, it was a surprise to read about it in the newspaper. And being the public member of the audit committee, I was kind of surprised that, I knew nothing about it until I read it in the paper.
I think you make a great point. There's no question. I think all of this is happening fairly quickly, and we try to get to the main players, if you will, our external auditors, our bond counsel, our board. I'll take ownership on maybe not necessarily reporting it to OIPA when I maybe should have at the time, but certainly as we've just been talking about it, it's been certainly public to everybody. But I'll take ownership for that. No one reason or another, but just focused on trying to get the right information to critical players at the right time is probably maybe not thinking of getting it to OIPA immediately as well. Again, the OIPA to us is a relatively new, maybe not relatively new, but somebody that really hasn't been part of our audit process, if you will, with our year-end financials, our bond disclosure council, but certainly something that we'll put in our arsenal going forward.
Good. Well, hopefully, going forward, this type of issues will be, brought to audit committee as well. I mean, to me, I know that actually, I want to say applaud that you are able to reconcile the majority of those accounts, and what's left, the amount is not very material. But at the same time, when we have like 55,000 accounts out of 90,000 that have issued, to me, that's serious enough that I think it would be good for audit committee to have a heads up. It might not be, very material in the end, but I think, it is a good, shared governance process, I think, to come to audit committee in the future.
I agree. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up. I guess to follow on to that question as well, when was the board leadership made aware of this?
So we let the board leadership know at their October 13th meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was only a week after we had told our external auditors and bond counsel.
Yeah. And then just following up to what board member Wong Nicholson made, I would fully expect at least the chair of the audit committee to be made aware of it at the same time as well. And I know you weren't trying, but you were doing a decent job of trying to dig yourself into a deeper hole by saying that we're not a critical function. I would claim that we are a critical function. It's more of a matter of
external
training all of staff to think we're a critical function. Because as your second answer is true. We're all still learning this audit function, even though it's been 5 years. It takes a while to get that learned memory built into our system.
Thank you for helping me
As I
out.
know every time I try to learn a new language. But anyway, so thanks for that. Were there any other questions? Or I did think at this point, you know, the IPA and I have talked about it a couple times, and in particular, from my perspective, this is now the second issue that's been brought up relative to the toll roads. The first one being the fact that we were losing revenues last year, and so I do think that it behooves the OIPA to be taking a look into this. And I know that Courtney, you've spent some time thinking about it. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about where your head's at right now, and then we can provide some additional guidance. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So I take this matter very seriously and our role very seriously. And so I really appreciate your service and your thoughts. And as we unpack this, my approach is to really, the team wants to get our hands around it and figure out really what's going on. You know, and I go back to this independence, and the chair and I have talked about this. It's that we have to be able to determine what are the facts here. And there's a couple ways that we can do that. But right now we're kind of in a fact-finding background mode of getting our hands around the situation. There's a lot of information. It's confusing, as you've heard, right? And we have to be able to represent to the public and to you all what's occurred, you know, why did the problem happen, and then what's being done. So there certainly is, we can investigate. That would be coming up with a list of questions and saying, these are the questions that they need to be answered. You know, there's a systemic issues of why did the system break down, and what do we need to do in order to fix it so this doesn't happen again, regardless of vendors, right? Because you can see just from looking at it, there's systemic holes in this that are concerning for sure, right? Beyond the fact of what are we really dealing with? And I think the critical role that we play is providing that information independently. Like if we can verify that, then we have a starting place that may lead to something greater. But I think it's very important that right now we be tasked to coming up with a scope in relation to that. And in my mind, I'm really thinking there's probably both parts are very, very important, the investigative part as well as the audit part. And I think that we will need additional resources to that. So that will also be a part of the reporting back. I'm a little concerned about the timing, Chair, because I don't think this can wait. I think that this is so critical to figure out, and there's a lot of moving pieces, a new contractor potentially being hired, all those pieces. So I am curious what our options are around that in relation to resources, if we need additional resources. And if the committee, if you all want to move forward, you know, I want to hear your thoughts as far as.
Yeah, so I mean, clearly this is an area I would expect the committee is going to want us to look into. There's the question about how we coordinate with what other investigations get kicked off. I'm not quite sure if the board direction was clear this morning, whether or not that'll be kicked off under the IPA's office or not. So that needs to get sorted out. But then Ray, I don't know if you have any comments on this resourcing or not.
Management has always been extremely supportive of OIPA, and we will provide any type of resources that you would need in order to do the type of investigation that you decide this warrants. And so what we would do is we would work together and we will figure out how to get you what you need.
Right. Yeah. So based on that, I think it would come down to, you know, coming up with a list of questions on what we need to answer right away. What do we need to get answered? And then also them building out more of a systemic approach around an audit.
Yes, and then I suppose, so as you said, you would start out with a scoping exercise. I'm assuming, you know, we would like actually some exploration to occur in the interim as well, but then we might come back at the next meeting with you saying, this is what we scoped out, and this is what we think we're going to do, and this is how it's then going to impact the audit plan. Because right now we do have an audit plan. We clearly don't want to entirely drop that audit plan. We want to keep a lot of those audits ongoing, but does that make sense?
It does make sense, Chair. And I just want you to know in relation to, we're already exploring it, right? I see that as my role to make sure if something like this happens, that we start to begin to explore it. So absolutely.
Okay. David.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to make sure that from a timing perspective, that you had mentioned that this time was of the essence and that we were bringing on a new vendor. I don't know if your intention was to try to finish some type of audit before we brought on a new vendor. If that's the case, the next meeting isn't until January, and I believe time is of the essence for us to bring on a new vendor. And so I just want to make sure we don't run into a delay being able to sign a contract with them. So
I hear you. Right. I think that when I say that, I think that time is of the essence to get the questions answered into relation to what has occurred, right? As far as having to solve the problem from an operational standpoint, where I see the crossover there is making sure that the process that is being put in place to move forward with the vendor, that is all transparent and addressed appropriately.
Okay, David again.
Yeah, so one question, Courtney, can you give me kind of a feel for what the time frame is going to be on this?
I'm
What you'd
concerned.
like, let's
Yeah, well, David, I'm concerned because of where we are in the year and the holiday right now. So, I think we would be shooting to get this is in a perfect world, an investigation wrapped up by the end of January on those would be questions to identify. Now, again, it's going to be a scoping exercise. It depends on how deep those questions are, but I think there's some preliminary questions about assessing what is really the situation. And I think that that's the starting point. So determining impact, determining, getting answers on numbers, impact, how it's impacting the current systems, the current financial systems, that part needs to occur right away. So I would say that's phase one, and that needs to be handled pretty quickly.
Yeah, so I would agree that this is important, that it should be within your office that is looking at that. And, I would, hope that you will keep us informed and so that we can understand the scope, the questions and all that, so that we can get these answers as quickly as possible to the public. And again, this should be an audit of high priority at this point to this group.
Sounds good. Agnes, you first.
Going back to setting a scope for what you're going to look into, I would like to suggest that, to me, actually, there are two separate major issues. One is the really operational, the software. Are we doing reconciliation on a timely basis to catch, problems like that timely, or was it done, appropriately, things like that. The second one, to me, is once the issues start surfacing, does the institution have the right response approach and, make sure the right people are informed, or there's a clear guideline, who should be doing what, when OIPA should be informed, that type of things, or the board or the audit committee. I think it'd be good to review that as well, because I think based on the media reporting, right, there's this sense that, maybe management tried to sweep it under the rug. And I think it would be good to come up with a, clear understanding, according to what Andreas shared with us, it seems like, okay, the timeline makes sense. But at the same time, I think it'd be good, for OIPA to take a look, so to can clear the air about that one.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for that. Just to follow on a little bit, and I'll get to you, Shani, is one of the questions, and I don't know that this is actually, Courtney, for you to answer, but between you and management to come back with at some point is that I think I would be interested in is when a contract's not performing, when do you notify either the board or leadership or the OIPA's office? I mean, from the perspective of, this contract clearly has been going on since 2016, and hasn't yet met its performance goals, when should that have been brought up? Because, and then what's based upon what scope? I mean, is it okay to be like that for 8 years if the end results are, well, it's costing us, $5,000 a year? Is that something the board needs to know in the context of a $50 million of revenue? I don't know. But so, when should the board and us and others be notified based upon a contract not performing? I think is a good answer to get to. And I'm actually probably it's more a management question, but I think we should be talking about that. Yeah, Shani.
Shanae.
Shanae.
And my comments are in alignment with the previous two. So it may be a legal question, but I also had a question in regards to, is there something in SANDAG's policies and procedures where there is a requirement or a time frame for reporting when issues like this arise? And then who would be in line for notification? I too agree that the audit committee should have been notified regarding this issue. But I was just wondering if there's something that currently exists regarding when that notification timeline should occur, because even though the amount was small in this instance, if this incident were to occur again, or a similar incident were to occur again, and the numbers were larger, I can only imagine that the public the response would be a lot more fierce than it is currently.
And Shanae, I just want to speak to that as well through the chair, that there's also the reporting of people knowing that we're here, so you'll, over the next couple months, you'll start to see us really ramp up communications with the employees, making sure people know who we are, how to safely report. We'll look and make sure that there is ways for people to report that feel safe, because you certainly can report things anonymously. That, we will investigate every tip. But I think that if we even could get the information sooner, that would be so critical in this, not only from the audit committee, right? But again, ramp up our reporting structures for incidents where employees are concerned. Because what I know is employees always know what's working and what's not working. So we've got to make sure it's easy for them to provide that information to us. And then that's how we can help from a prevention effect or catching things sooner. But the other part I just want to say for everyone is that, we don't know. We're going to start off objective, impartial. We're going to come up with our questions, please. And I want to make sure that everybody, any concerns that you have, if that you are relaying those concerns to me as we go through this scoping exercise, because that's how we can come up with the best determination on what questions we're going to answer. And that I don't talk about, once we start work, it's like, I'm not going to speculate. We'll come back when the report is complete and that we have something to speak to.
I have a question. So the vendor's not performing. Is this like a contract? Is it like a progress payment?
Is your mic on, or could you speak into your mic a little better? Yeah, thanks.
So if the vendor's not performing, is this a progress contract where we don't have to pay them for the time that they're not performing? So
Happy to field that. So the contract for this particular vendor was set up with a series of progress payments upon completion of different milestones. And so once they reach that milestone satisfactorily, then they get the payment. So there are payments made along the way. There are also opportunities within that contract to withhold payment from a contractor in the event the deliverables are not satisfactory or they are delayed. So that does exist within the contract. With this particular contract, the agency did withhold certain payments from the contractor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah. So I'm happy to hear other thoughts too. My inclination would be to, and just to make sure it's captured effectively, to have a motion, but a motion on the order of that we direct the OIPA to start an investigation and to come back to us, start an investigation, come back with a scoping with the impacts to the audit plan, and then also to direct management to give the OIPA the necessary resources to do this investigation in a timely fashion. Does that sound good to people?
I'll second. Yep, there was a motion.
That was a motion, yes.
Chair, can I make one comment, please?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. So the one thing that Davis Farr has told us is currently Fagan is investigating the balance of that 10,000 that's remaining. They will not issue an audit opinion until that report is completed by Fagan. So my only caution is maybe Courtney can check in with Jennifer. In other words, if we're opening up another investigation, they might not be able to deliver their audits until the investigation is complete. Now, I appreciate the gravity of the situation, but there's only certain extensions that we could get. And part of SR 125 rolls up to SANDAG's audited financials, which includes the commission. So it's a bigger.
So understood, Andre, and I don't know, maybe either Amberlynn or Courtney can help me make sure the motion is worded in a way to realize that this is a performance/process investigation that specifically with respect to the item that's been raised. I don't know if there's a way to say that we shouldn't be holding up the results or not. I mean, do we?
Hold on, but I'm unclear what Andre.
Well, he's worried about doing his end of year financial reporting. And if you've opened an investigation, they may not be able to do that until that investigation is complete.
And I disagree with that.
Right.
So,
I just was saying, so
I think that they're two separate, a financial statement audit and us going in and doing an investigation are two separate things.
And Amberlynn, do you feel that's fair?
So maybe a potential modification to the motion would be, rather than say initiate, which I believe your actual words were to initiate an audit. I believe Courtney's characterized it as an investigation. Perhaps it could be to direct the independent performance auditor to return with the scoping that she has proposed in consideration of an investigation or to further an investigation, something along those lines.
As long as we don't think that the fact that, she will be doing work in the perspective of, I want to make sure that she's given the resources to start doing the work that she needs to do in this space. Does that meet your need, Courtney?
Well, I just want a point of clarification when we get to direct. So in a situation like this, we can go ahead and proceed with an investigation based on just AB 805, correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just want to be careful on how we language.
The direction's coming from here, because even in the context of AB 805, we're supposed to provide the overall guidance. But yes, you can go do the investigation in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, and also for the clarity, so the public understands, because I think even today in the board meeting, it was stated several times, internal auditor.
Right.
We are not the internal auditor.
Yes.
We are clearly the independent auditor.
Correct. You have your ability to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we good with that clarification? Amberlynn, you caught it? Okay. Do we have a voting? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Hey, sorry.
Chair, can you repeat the motion? Now I just want to, or can somebody repeat the motion?
Yeah. So the motion is to,
Either Amber.
okay. Yeah. Amberlynn, go ahead. Repeat what you think you have, Amberlynn. Good idea.
So I believe that the proposed motion is to direct the independent performance auditor to return to the audit committee with more information regarding the scoping of an investigation related to the toll operations, and to, I believe the second half of that motion was to direct that management and the independent performance auditor work towards resourcing that effort. Did that sound correct?
That's close. I'll read it. So there was two things. There was one, there are three things there. One, which you captured, which is to go ahead and authorize the OIPA to go ahead and start scoping this investigation and doing what she needs to scope out and do the investigation as it comes up. Two, to make modifications to the annual audit plan so we understand what the impacts of those are. And then three, to direct management, as much as our ability is, to provide the necessary resources to do this work. If they choose not to, then I guess we'll have another conversation. But those were the three items. Does that work?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm just like, we're gonna come up with the questions. I'm just thinking as far as status on the investigation, we're gonna start proceeding, but our next meeting's
Yeah.
in the beginning of January.
Yes.
So we'll
With
be
2
able
weeks of
to
Christmas and New Year's in between.
modify or expand.
Oh,
the
yeah, for
scope.
sure. Yeah, definitely. Okay. With that, voting screen, please. Oh, yeah. I guess I should instruct you. You actually have to push the button 1 for yes, 2 for no, and 3 for abstain. There you go. And that motion passes unanimously. Sorry, I forget how these pucks are confusing the first time around.
They're confusing concepts.
Okay, with that, I'd like to, because we may need it in the context of what we just did, potentially as well, I'd like to move on to item number 5, which is update and retaining independent counsel for the audit committee. There was an update posted yesterday to the attachment 1, which is a draft policy that has been put out there. First, I'd like to ask, are there any public comments on the proposed policy?
Yes, we
Tessa.
have one hand from the public. The original draw, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I just think it's important that whoever you select, I mean, this is an important entity because it's looks into the things that are going on, and I actually appreciate your comments in the last item and your commitment to want to look into this. And so I hope that, whoever's going to be selected in this and when you're retaining them, that they will be one to be willing to look into this without having any kind of, bias in the decision making, because, I find that especially when it's so hard for things to come out and you're not even being given the information, that should kind of be telling as well. Why is it that, when you almost have to kind of fight to get the information in order to audit the things that you want to audit? So it seems that, SANDAG actually makes it harder on you guys to complete the work that needs to be done. And why is that? So I don't know if there needs to be more auditing into other parts of this entity to see where that's coming from, especially like when you're talking about when this information needs to be given to you guys, and like, is there a time frame? So I don't know if there needs to have something come forward where you guys ensure that you're the ones that get this information right away, so that you can do what you need to do. And so I hope that whoever's being put in this position is going to do their due diligence.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. So moving into this, we have 2 new members, and so you're not, we did discuss this last time. What you see before you is largely repackaging what we had last time into a format that is hopefully more digestible for the audit committee, and based upon the feedback that we got last time. Otherwise, the content is largely the same. And happy to take any comments. My primary comment was, my request at this point, given what's before us, is that clearly, if we approve this policy, that we would just consider, for now at least, authorizing the chair, myself, and the IPA, as well as maybe one other member, to go ahead with any acquisition necessary, as opposed to having to bring it back to the audit committee, so we can keep things moving on in a timely fashion if we need to, as opposed to having to do the acquisition through the audit committee. But I'd be interested in hearing feedback there, and if people are comfortable with that, and who else might want to participate in that, if so, because we could have up to 2 of us in that discussion as well. So any comments or thoughts?
So you believe that we're looking at this toll road operation, that we're going to need an independent counsel on this?
We don't know.
Right.
Okay. Well, if you do know, or if you figure it out, yeah, let's get that person on board. My other comment on this is, I appreciate Agnes and you, Dave, for nailing this down finally, and so that we could get this passed as quickly as possible. I'm real happy with what's happened here.
Yes.
So just a clarifying question on regards to the contract itself. Is the intent that this would be the equivalent of probably a bench contract where you choose one firm and then you go and use them as needed? Or is the intent to go and procure legal services every time you sort of identify a need?
The original intent was to look at putting somebody firm on the bench so it could be quicker, but we have to understand what the cost of that is. So I guess it could change, but this is to follow a process of how that happens and to define that. But yeah, I think ideally we would have someone on the bench, but we have to understand what the cost is and whether or not so far in 5 years of existence of the audit committee, it's only been used once. I believe that if we talked to the previous IPA, she would have liked to have had access more often than that. But it's probably not monthly, right? So it'd be quickest and best if somebody was on the bench, but I want to understand what the cost is going to be too. Do you have any input, Courtney, to that, or any thoughts?
I think ideally we'd want somebody on the bench as needed so that we can call on them. And
right.
As the chair said, we need to figure out that as far as the contracting process. Yeah.
And hopefully, that firm is big enough to have a lot of expertise. So, but in the event that the firm selected doesn't have the expertise, I hope this gives us flexibility and say, sometimes we have to go and find a specialist to do that. Yeah.
Yep. Makes sense. Okay. Anybody care to make a motion to accept this as the process that we're going to follow for doing independent counsel?
Yeah, so move.
And moved by.
I'll second, and I do want to second it in honor of Bob and Stuart.
There you go. and Mary. So yes, that's appreciated. With that, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Okay, the next item is the audit that we performed. I do want to do a time check because I do know that, I don't know, Melissa, do you know how long your presentation is about? 5 minutes, and I'm guessing yours would be about 5 minutes. I just want to make sure, I know Agnes, you said you're 4:30 hard stop. At best case, anybody else have to leave right away? Or okay, so we will go ahead and take this one then so we can get it done.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair. So I have the honor to present our first audit, the operational process and system control audit for board member and employee travel and other business related reimbursements for the period. The period, but Chris will go over the period. I just want to do some opening comments so that so the objective of the engagement was to audit the SANDAG's operational processes and system controls related to board member and employee travel and other business related reimbursements to ensure policies and controls exist and are followed. Our audit found that approval for employee travel, including adequate supporting documentation, needs improvement. Additionally, we found advanced written approval was not documented in several instances, including explanations justifying employee professional development expenses. We did not find any areas of noncompliance with policies for board members' travel, tuition reimbursement, board stipends, COVID-19 stipends, cell phone allowances, or home computer purchase programs. So we did present 6 recommendations, which Chris will go over in addition to the more detailed findings. And lastly, I want to thank SANDAG management for their cooperation and their commitment to timely implement the recommendations that you will hear about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our auditor, Christopher Delgado.
Thank you, Auditor Ruby. My name is Christopher Delgado. I am an associate auditor, and the audit I'm going to be discussing with you today, as Ms. Ruby said, the operational process and system control audit for board member and employee travel and other business-related reimbursements. So, next slide.
I got you. Just tell me.
You got me? Okay, cool. Our objective was to conduct an audit of SANDAG's board member and employee business-related reimbursements These reimbursements included travel for both board members and employees, professional development reimbursements that encompass 4 areas that I will discuss later, board stipends, COVID-19 stipends, cell phone allowances, home computer co-payments and loans. And the period we audited was from July 1st, 2020 through May 31st, 2023. So finding 1, non-compliant travel reimbursements. During an audit of 53 randomly selected employee travel reimbursements, we noted that 2 were not in compliance for the following. Airfare accommodations were booked and travel commenced prior to receiving written approval. Exceeding the allowable GSA hotel lodging rate for the locality visited, which was Washington, D.C., without proper approvals. GSA is an agency that establishes lodging rates, amongst other things, for federal employees. These are the rates that SANDAG has adopted per Board Policy 11. The GSA rate at the time of travel for Washington, D.C. was $258. However, the hotel provided a government rate that was not GSA, which was $310. And I want to note that we also audited all 10 board member travel reimbursements that happened for the period, and there were no reportable findings. Next slide. So for finding 1, we have 3 recommendations. Our first recommendation is to create 2 separate travel documents, one that captures the travel request and the other that captures the expenses needing to be reimbursed to the employees. Currently there is a single document that's used to capture both of these things. Our second recommendation is to provide training to staff regarding the travel request and reimbursement process to ensure that they are familiar with the requirements. And our third and final recommendation is to update the travel procedures so that written approval can be captured via text message or email in the event that a certifying official is not readily available. This documentation should be included in the final travel packet. And we recommend this process until the travel request and reimbursement process becomes fully automated. So on to finding 2, non-compliant professional development reimbursements. The areas for professional development are professional education, tuition assistance, certification and licensing, and professional memberships. I want to mention that there were no reportable findings for tuition assistance. So I'm just going to talk about the other 3, starting with professional education. So for professional education, we reviewed all 13 reimbursements that were made during the audit period and noted that 7 were not in compliance for the following. All 7 of those reimbursements were missing advance written approval from the supervisor, and 6 of those 7 were missing written documentation explaining how the professional education is job relevant and beneficial to both the employee and SANDAG. For certification and licensing, we reviewed all 20 reimbursements for the audit period and noted that 16 were not in compliance for the following. They were missing advance written approval from both the supervisor and director, and 16 were missing written documentation explaining how the certification or license directly contributes to the employee's professional development. And finally, for professional memberships, we reviewed all 18 reimbursements for the audit period and noted that 13 reimbursements were not in compliance for the following. All 13 were missing advance written approval from the supervisor and director. And we're also missing written documentation explaining how the professional membership is job relevant and pertains directly to the work and interests of the agency. So for finding 2, we have 3 recommendations. Our first recommendation is to create a standardized form, or standardized forms, I should say, for all professional development areas that capture all the required written pre-approvals and explanation of benefits to both the employee and SANDAG. Our second recommendation is to update procedures to ensure all required documentation is submitted in order for staff to be reimbursed. If this documentation is not submitted, the request should be rejected until proper documentation can be supplied. Our third and final recommendation is to provide training to staff on the requirements to qualify for the professional development benefits that the agency offers. Next slide, please. And at this time, I'd like to open the floor to any questions that the committee may have.
Okay, so we'll take a couple of questions here if people have questions, but I'd like to stick with questions until we get after the public comment, okay? But just only questions for now. So did you have a question, Ms. Wong Nickerson?
Yes, questions. So those findings that you have, either be it to professional development or the certificate or membership that you talked about, they didn't have prior approval or didn't explain why it's relevant to their job. Did you find any incidents that actually is really not appropriate rather than just a documentation issue?
It was just a documentation issue. All the reimbursements that I did review seemed appropriate.
Great, thank you.
And to follow up, did you find any instances where there were, where those with approval authority were approving their own reimbursements or travel requests?
No.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, thanks. We'll move on to the management portion of this now.
The enviable place on the agenda, right? After 8 hours of meetings today. So thank you for your attention. For the new members of the Audit Committee, I'm Melissa Kaufelt. I'm the Senior Director of Organization Effectiveness, and the scope of my role includes overseeing a number of our internal business functions, human resources, contracts and procurement, our Office of Diversity and Equity, facilities, and so forth. So certainly our executive assistant team as well also reports to me. I work very closely with Ray and other senior management. So wanted to also start my remarks by kudos to Christopher, for the manner in which the audit was conducted. It was, I really appreciated your patience, guidance, support. This audit sort of came as we were doing a lot of other things, and Chris was incredibly flexible and helping us sort of manage both our timelines and the audit timelines as well. So I really appreciate that. Also appreciate the manner in which we were able to dialogue throughout the audit to really get clarification about the questions and the inquiries, and then supply the information that the audit team was looking for. The packet that the audit team included in this item had Hassan's management response letter. And if we could go to the next slide, I just wanted to sort of illustrate one of the main, or a couple of the main items there. The first being that management takes no exception to any of the findings from this particular audit. Again, we see this as an opportunity to continue to review and refine our processes, our practices, all with all in the spirit of continuous improvement and wanting to do things as well as we possibly can on behalf of the organization. And then to the next slide, please. Just wanted to quickly highlight how management intends to undertake the various recommendations. Christopher had, I keep calling him Christopher had walked through 6 recommendations. And so, as I said, management takes no exception to the findings, and we intend to undertake all of the recommendations that were put forth. So when it comes to the travel reimbursement side of things, I mentioned that the executive assistant team is one of the groups that I oversee. I have had that responsibility since about May this year. And in that 6-month period, we have heavily focused on our practices for supporting business travel for employees. We have focused on improving practices and procedures. And so this recommendation to look at separating our travel request from the reimbursement form is something that we're already working on. We have a prototype that we'll be issuing and testing out in the next month or so, refining it, and intend to have that in place next spring. The recommendation to make sure our executive assistants and others are trained, again, in the work that we're doing. We're going through our procedure guide. I'm asking the team to provide their input and feedback on the procedures we currently use so that we can refine those and make sure that those are really aligned to best practices and controls for the organization. The audit findings definitely will help us with that process. And again, directly engaging the team to do that work. And finally, it doesn't happen too often, but these very urgent requests for travel that come up, the executive assistants and I have already adopted a new procedure there using text messages to get that urgent approval and making sure that a copy of those is included in the supporting documentation, as well as getting the normal approval that would be required as part of a travel request. So actively working on all three of these recommendations. Next slide talks about the professional development reimbursements. Again, this is work that I will be undertaking with our business services team as well as our human resources team. The core of these policies sit within our employee and administrative policies. So again, based on the feedback from the audit, we'll go through, we'll look at where we can clarify language, where we can streamline and strengthen processes to make sure that we have forms and tools for making sure that we capture upfront pre-approvals for any of these types of professional development reimbursements, that employees in making these requests can clearly articulate the benefit to the organization for the investment that the organization is making, if it is for training or memberships or tuition reimbursements and so forth. Those new practices, those new tools, we'll make sure that those are readily available on our staff intranet site. As those are launched into the organization, we'll make sure that employees have full awareness of those tools and those new practices. And I think Chris alluded to in the months ahead, as we continue the deployment of our ERP system, we'll be able to leverage that technology to set up workflows to capture the pre-approvals, the justifications, and then the approvals on the back end. So looking forward to having some more robust tools in place toward the end of the year. So as I wrap up, just wanted to say once again, really have appreciated working with Lloyd and Chris and the rest of the audit team, as well as with Courtney. I think in the last couple of weeks, we've worked together on a couple of things already. Greatly appreciate that and happy to answer any questions that you might have about management's work toward the audit plan.
Great, thanks. I think I will go to public comment first, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you.
Francesca.
One public comment, the original draw, you can go ahead.
I guess it just doesn't make sense to me why, you do such a small amount of audits on the employees when there's, I don't know if this includes the board members, but there's over 400 employees in SANDAG. And so it's confusing as to why you would only, select a small number, and then you're going to get a small percentage of, issues that need to be looked into, but you're not really looking at a larger number to really see if there is a bigger issue than just this, small amount. So I guess, I just don't understand why, and that's how we do things with data all the time. It'll be like, you ask such a small number and then you'll be like 50% of them said this, but it's really not even like 50% of the total amount of people that could be accessed to get information from. So it seems a little bit negligent to be doing such a small number. But even when you're finding that small number, that means that in the larger number of it, there's going to be more, and you may even find more issues that you didn't even find in this. So I just don't understand how we can call that an audit. But when we're talking about the travel expenses and different things of these board members, they shouldn't be engaging and going to, globalist elites to decide things that are going to happen in our county and have the people pay for it, especially when these board members don't want to hear from, like especially Nora Vargas, doesn't want to hear from the public and will do anything to shut them up. Yet we pay for her to go talk to these other people.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Great, thanks. I guess since there was an interesting point, Ms. Ruby, did you want to say something?
That we looked at, for the most part, the entire population of, I think the first item was randomly sampled, but the rest of them was 100%. It wasn't a sample, it was 100%.
That is correct. For the professional development benefits, it was 100%. That was from 2020 to 2023. And then the travel, I took a 25% sample of the entire
And
population.
25% is definitely statistically significant. So it's a good sample. I think most people probably don't realize how little travel goes on in the organization. So that might be somewhat surprising. So with that, any other questions for management? Yes.
So my question is in regards to the corrective action related to the reimbursements that weren't in compliance. Is there going to be a requirement for staff to pay that money back, or is this just we've noted it going forward, please don't do it ever again?
It's a correction in process. So it wasn't that staff needed to pay the money back. It was more like when we talked about the development expenses, that on the question that committee member Agnes Wong Nickerson had asked, the expenditure was appropriate. It was the pre-approval that was missing. Yeah. So, but thank you.
And to
Very
further
good
clarify,
question.
if we found something that was inappropriate, we likely would have suggested and made a recommendation that it get paid back.
Most
correct?
definitely. Yes.
I have a question. So, on the corrective action, in your audit plan, is the follow-up on these corrective actions to make sure they're implemented, is that part of the audit plan?
It is part of what the IPA has to provide back to you, that we follow up on those corrective actions so you know the status, and that we work to make sure management closes them, that implements them.
Yeah, and actually, I'm sure one of our IPA's most beloved tasks that she delegates out is we do get a report every year. Our years are our fiscal years, which are July 1st to June 30th. And usually in July, we get this really nice big table that shows where everything's at. It's really good to see. So I'm looking forward to that process continuing.
Oh, as am I. And Chair, I would be remiss to not acknowledge that this was Mary Kay's last audit. So while I got the honor to present, this was another one of her great audits put forth with the team. So
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to acknowledge that. Any other questions or comments? I just like to thank management again for having a corrective action plan with dates and timelines and things that we can follow up on, and looking forward to us sticking to it, even though we live in a chaotic environment. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve sending the audit on to the board. I have a motion by Wong Nickerson.
Second.
Second by Drucker. Please vote. Okay. With that, I think I did want to make a comment in case Ms. Wong Nickerson has to leave.
I'm able to push my mix back.
Okay, so good. So then we'll just go through the next item on the agenda was item 2, which is the update of the independent performance auditor activities. I don't know if you wanted to give any updates or.
I can briefly state, it's really just been to get on board, get my hands around everything. Obviously, we've completed this audit. So had the opportunity right in the first week to work with the team to publish this and with the chair. And then the matter of SR 125 has come up. So that's definitely taken our attention and will continue to take our attention. And then we have the contracts audit going on as well. So Lloyd and the team are working hard on that. And that is the first in a series of 10 that we will be completing. In addition to that, there's the regular cadence of fraud, waste, and abuse reports, the CAP report, the corrective action plan that will come to you. So I I've got roller skates on and I'm going as fast as I can to get up to speed.
Great, thank you. Francesca, are there any public comments on the update?
Thank you, Chair. No hands from the public.
Perfect. We will then move on to approval of the meeting minutes, which was the last item that we pushed back. Are there any hands on the approval of meeting minutes for public comment?
Yes, thank you. One hand, the original draw. You can go ahead.
Yeah, just my comments that were on the last meeting is that, you know, all of the different fraud, waste and abuse that happens and the people don't really get listened to as far as that goes. You know, I forgot what I was going to say. But also I just actually wanted to comment on the last thing that you were saying. I still don't understand how you're saying that you sample 100% when you're saying that you selected 53 and only 2 are not in compliance. So I don't know what you guys are doing with that, but it just, that really doesn't make any sense. And hang on just one second. Just one moment. Yeah, so what also I said was that you were manipulating and controlling information and the lack of spending on things that enhance people's lives and the people's lack of trust in SANDAG. So, I mean, it's just sad that there is such a lack of trust when you guys are supposed to be doing things that are for the community, and it tends to be things that, you know, enslave the people and make sure that they don't have any control over their lives. And like I mentioned before, with people like Nora Vargas going and meeting with these globalist elites that are pushing us into these 15-minute smart cities that you guys are in lockstep with, you know, the people's should not be paying for stuff like that, especially when they don't listen to the public.
That concludes the public comments.
That, if there are no member comments, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd move approval of the.
Thanks. Do I have a second? Second by Board Member Pigney Forrest. Please vote. That motion passes unanimously. Great. So that concludes our regular agenda. Big news, and I had nothing to do with this. This was just told to me. Our meeting time has moved. Hopefully it won't create an issue for anybody, but instead of the second Friday, the afternoon of the second Fridays, we're now the morning of the first Friday. So our next meeting is scheduled to be Friday, January 5th at 9 a.m. We generally try to target these meetings to fit within a 2-hour window. So I do think I'd be curious for, you know, people can provide me, you know, input offline if they want, if they for a 10 a.m. start versus a 9 a.m. start, or if they like the 9 a.m. start. You know, that was just what was told to me. I suspect we could push it a little bit if people don't like 9 a.m., but just let me know if you have an opinion. But right now that meeting will be at 9 a.m. And with that, wish everybody an incredible holiday season and an amazingly happy new year. And hope you get to spend some good time with people that are important to you, and have a good break. Thanks. We're adjourned.